Latinos. So please, Carlos, go ahead and start.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to start with my personal story because that's how I developed Finhabits, and that's why Finhabits exists. I grew up in the border town. I born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and growing up there in an immigrant household, we always talked about, my parents always talked about how to work really hard and earn your money, but we never really talked about how to plan for your financial future. So when I graduated from college, I ended up at a large bank, and one of my first things you do is you get the HR package, and I didn't know what a 401k was, so I didn't take advantage of it, even though there was a huge opportunity and there was a matching, but I didn't know what it was. It was until the third year when a friend told me, I already have this amount and it's matched, and I was like, I can't believe I missed it. And then I started thinking, like, this is happening probably every day when someone like me, growing up in an immigrant household, joins the workforce. And it's not about education. I went to college. It has to do with the culture, and I think that's a very important distinction. So I created Finhabits to solve that problem. Finhabits is a financial service that allows anyone through their smartphone to easily start a retirement account in just a few minutes. We make it very easy, and we make it very transparent, so that it doesn't matter that you've never heard what a 401k was. You understand what you're doing, and you can start contributing towards your retirement, even if with small amounts. So we are an SEC registered investment advisor, but we are a technology company. We built everything in-house, and when we designed our service, we thought about the consumer first, and we built everything from the first screen to the end. We build it with nudges so that the consumer understands what they're doing and how they can make contributions that are recurring, even if they're very small, even if it's $5 a week, but that helps them build a habit. So at the end of the day, that's why it's called Finhabits, because we want to build smart habits. So today we've seen a lot of success, and we've been able to get a lot of consumers that never saved. 85% of our clients have never saved for retirement. And today we see very interesting numbers about, on average, our consumers put about $40 a week towards their retirement accounts. And they're really comfortable and happy that they can get and see their contributions and their reminders in their smartphone. So I believe we solved the problem of access that we talked about, but we're also solving the problem of culture, because we are designing a product with that consumer in mind from the ground up. So as we engage with more and more consumers, we also learn a lot more about distinctions of how the Latino consumer in Texas behaves, which is different than how the Latino consumer in Florida behaves, or the consumer in California might behave. And then we can iterate and make the product better. So it's very important for us to be transparent and cost effective, but at the same time use technology as a leverage to make it easy for anyone to start saving with as little as $5 a week.
And I know that when we talk to Steve, we're going to hear about a different approach to expand access, and that's going to be a big part of the conversation this morning. Go ahead, Samantha.
Sure. Well, first, good morning, everyone, and thank you to Aspen for hosting this event, and to everyone here to learn with us today and discuss these very important issues. For those of you who may not know us well, I'm with Unidos US, formerly the National Council of La Raza. We are a 50-year-old civil rights and advocacy group, and with a mission to really strengthen our nation by improving opportunities for Americans, particularly Latinos. We combine public policy and advocacy work on issues with programs and practice in the field. We're positioned with a unique strength in that our work is bolstered by a robust network of nearly 300 community-based affiliates out in the field. They are a unique strength in that They're our connection to the community. They help us ensure that the work we're doing is truly connected to need in the community, but they're also an important asset in helping amplify the Latino voice and our work, and just helping us have that perspective heard. Our work falls into 5 core policy areas, one of which is economic policy. Within that portfolio, we have a wealth building portfolio where we work on all of these issues that we're talking about here today, and do a lot of work in a lot of different areas of access to safe and affordable savings vehicles, including retirement, home ownership, consumer protection, small dollar loans, and increasingly student debt. That's a lot to cover on a day-to-day basis, but they're all especially critical when you have a strategy aiming for economic security, wealth building, and upward mobility. I'll use my bit of time today to cover quickly and just revisit a bit what we know about Latino wealth and the work we're focusing on right now at Unidos US to really help respond to and protect our community from threats to economic security. In terms of Latino wealth, we got some really great news in the past couple of weeks. The Federal Reserve released their triennial, every 3 years, they release a survey of consumer finances. In there, they have robust data on just how Americans are saving their money, spending, living their financial lives. And for Latinos, we got some good news in that Latino wealth between 2013 and 2016 increased by 46%. Now, that's a big number. And unfortunately, when you look at the real numbers, that's an increase from 14,000 for the average family in 2013 to about 20,000 in 2016. But at any rate, it's an increase, and we're happy to see that. At the same time, when you look at it compared to the average white family, we see that the wealth gap along racial and ethnic lines continues to deepen. So even though Latinos saw an increase in net wealth, the gap between the average Latino family and the average white family grew by 14% in that same time period. So the average white family having about $171,000 in wealth in 2016 compared to the Latinos about $20,000. White families had 8.5 times more wealth than the average Latino family. But I don't want to lose sight that there has been progress, and that progress has been due in large part due to smart policies and the hard work of our community. So we know that progress is possible, but that progress is fragile. And we certainly can't just assume that as the economy continues to improve, that everyone will have a fair shot at getting a good job and putting away money and have a fair chance at upward mobility and wealth to get ahead. We know from experience that individual behaviors and market forces alone aren't enough to reverse discrimination and inequality. So instead, we know that we need to intentionally level the playing field to get more families in our community better positioned to save and build assets. We need to secure their economic footing. And we have the tools at our disposal right now. You've all probably heard of some really big fiscal policy conversations around the federal budget and taxes. And as much as those aren't as exciting as some of the innovative things that my fellow co-panelists are working on and talking about, they're absolutely critical to Latino economic security. Because smart choices in fiscal policy can lead to economic growth and individual income security, but only if they're intentional and target populations that need it most. And the proposals that we're seeing right now severely miss this mark and severely threaten economic gains that we've seen recently with the Latino community. I won't go into a whole lot of numbers, but the budget proposal right now working its way through Congress will really do nothing more than pull the rug out from under our community and see millions of Americans hit really hard when programs that they rely on when times are tough or when wages just aren't enough are severely cut. things like nutrition assistance, Medicaid, rental assistance. The anti-poverty effects of those programs are undeniable. In the Latino community, we know that these programs lift millions of working Latinos out of poverty. And without those supports, we're going to see millions more Latinos and Latino children fall into or deeper into poverty, and we just can't have that happen. One other quick thing that I just want to remind you all is how the budget and tax are inextricably linked. These budget cuts aren't to reduce the deficit. They're not to reach a balanced budget. They're not going to ensure program integrity. The only thing they are going to ensure is that more Latinos will find it harder to put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads, and pave the way for our wealthiest Americans and large corporations to get massive tax cuts. There are talks of tax reforms. That framework, there aren't a whole lot of details, but one thing is clear, that American people aren't the priority, and those cuts will largely bypass our average workers and certainly Latinos. So we're doing everything we can to sound the alarm, to make it clear what these proposals mean to the economic security of our community, and how without economic security, no matter how many innovative wealth-building activities we have out there, which we are still moving full speed ahead because we recognize the power of those programs, we just really need to take this current threat of the budget and tax right now seriously and raise it up and make our voice heard.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Steve.
Well, let me also join in thanking Jeremy and the Aspen Institute for the invitation here today. We at Secure Choice are very pleased to start getting out the word about our program. We feel that we have a very important role to play, and I want to talk a little bit first about Secure Choice and then about why it in particular affects the Latino community in California and what we're hoping to do about that as we go forward. Secure Choice, for those of you who don't know, is the retirement security option that will provide that type of program for up to 7 million Californians who work in the private sector and who don't have access to a retirement security program currently. It represents 5 years of work that both the California State Senate Pro Tem Kevin De Leon and Treasurer John Chun have been working on to bring this to the fore. And we're very pleased that, in fact, we're in our 10th month of existence. We were authorized as of January 1st of this year, and we're hitting the ground running and going very quickly. We are led by a 9-member board, of which I am pleased to be the designated chair. We meet monthly to make sure that, in fact, we can get toward that goal of starting sometime next year. That's our goal, is maybe with a pilot in the summer, but hopefully get underway fully late in the fall of 2018 or at the latest early 2019. And the idea is to be able to provide those services to the folks that will, in fact, need retirement options going forward. We are ably led by Katie Selensky, who joins me here today. I was so fortunate to be able to hire her in April, and we now have a staff of 6. And we are assiduously, like I say, working toward the goal of trying to get the program underway in the summer. So one might ask, well, what's the connection between obviously our efforts and the Latino community, Latino workforce in California? Well, first of all, about 50% of our target audience will be Latino. They tend to be focused or concentrated in areas that don't provide the type of retirement security that a lot of people are familiar with. They are in industries like agriculture, construction, the services industry that don't have those types of options available at work. And so we believe that we need to pay particular attention to the Latino community as we go forward, the Latino workforce as we go forward. Part of the issue is that not only is the option not provided, but when it is, we find that often the amount of savings that are being put away by Latino workers is not enough to really secure their retirement. They tend to be, as I think was shown by Abigail Zapote, they tend to be very low income or low resources that are invested in those accounts, and will not represent anything that will help address needs of the elderly as they get ready to retire. I just want to make mention of the fact that Abigail mentioned that it might be curious that millennials are working on issues affecting seniors. I'm proud to be a senior who's working on issues affecting seniors. It occurred to me as soon as she said that. At Secure Choice, we are, let me just first of all say, since we're only 10 months into this, a lot of what we are going to be putting forward are things that we anticipate will happen, because we don't know. We are a new program. We're lucky to follow in the footsteps of Oregon, which started their program July 1st of this year. Illinois will soon also be following suit, so the three of us are sort of the trendsetters in terms of what a public retirement security program will look like. But we believe that we're on the right path, and again, working with our colleagues in Oregon and Illinois, I think we're coming up with solutions that will help address the conundrum that's faced by Latino workforce. Let me mention a couple of things relative to how we're hoping to make it a place where Latino workers will see that it's worth investing in their own future. First of all, when we begin to assemble the type of program that we're offering, we want to make it as have basic options if we can, not make it too complicated. One of the things that we have found in the research that we've seen, and I want to especially compliment Unidos US because they have done some groundbreaking work in terms of telling us who's out there and what are their needs and what are some of the barriers that will prevent us from being able to fully realize the value of our program. And so we're taking that research and trying to apply, I think, solutions that make sense for this community. So first of all, I mentioned basic, simple investing options. The first being that we don't want to have an array of 20, 30 different funds that people might invest in. We want to do it so that there is just a simple numbers that people can understand. Target date funds would be something that I think that we're going to be looking at as a way of assuring people that if they're planning to retire 30 years from now, there's a series of investments funds that they can put their money toward that will help realize their goals in that year that they expect to retire. Another basic element of our program is likely to be what we call a sidecar or a capitalized investment fund that will be very low income interest bearing, but in fact will assure that the workers who do invest don't have their money eroded by changes in the investment field or in the economy. So we want to make sure that a certain amount of the money that's invested goes into that fund and is there for their future. I mentioned about the simplicity, but we're also very keen on flexibility. So one of the things that the program will allow for is portability. We recognize that in particular in the Latino community, you have people that may be going from one job to the next. We want to make sure that the investment option follows them. In many cases, you'll have people who are working more than one job at the same time. And so we want to make sure that their investments are going toward something that they can continue to invest in regardless of where they work. So we're very focused on portability. And then finally, and one of the issues I want to close with, we want to make sure that in fact that we're as flexible as possible. So we're likely to start with the option of a Roth IRA, meaning that the taxes will already have been taken out so that if people need to access, for whatever reason, the funds that they've invested in Secure Choice, they can easily access those funds and withdraw them if we need to. And therein lies the rub, because we are here to promote a culture of saving and saving as much as possible over the long term. And if we're making it flexible for people to withdraw their money, we recognize that that can be a problem. But we also have to recognize that there is a sort of a dichotomy or hierarchy of financial need that we need to be realistic about. That people saving for long-term retirement may not be the most immediate thing that's on their minds, or quite frankly, that they have to worry about. So we have to make it so that they can, on a monthly basis, if they need to, they can withdraw those funds. But we will do everything, I think, in our efforts to make sure that they understand that the way that they're going to build this nest egg for retirement is to invest as much as they can now and leave it for as long a period of time as they can. And only doing that will allow us to ensure that these populations, and in particular the Latino workforce, are able to save for their retirement. So I'm going to stop there. I'm happy to engage in the question and answer going forward.
And we're joined by John Herrera. Thank you for running from the airport. We briefly introduced you, but we wanted everyone on the panels had an opportunity to give about 5 minutes of remarks. We want to make sure that we have enough time for a conversation, but also so that there's at least 20 minutes or so for questions from all of you. So John, please introduce yourself and tell us about the credit union.
Thank you. I guess my arrival is very symbolic of how soon Latinos start savings for their retirement in this country, and sometimes we do start late. I'm an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you for the Aspen Institute for the invitation. And I'm a strong believer in credit unions. And credit unions promote the culture of savings. That's what we promote in our communities, about people helping people and finding solutions to our issues. 17 years ago, we started a tremendous project called the Latino Community Credit Union, what started as a partnership, as a community partnership in Durham, North Carolina, with the community-based organization El Centro Hispano, and then the two largest credit unions in the state of North Carolina, Self-Help Credit Union, which is where I work, and North Carolina State Employees Credit Union, as well as a nonprofit intermediary called the North Carolina Minority Support Center that historically had been supporting minority credit unions, mostly African Americans in North Carolina. And that partnership gave us the opportunity to the community to create our own financial institution. People were victims of crime because where we come from, we primarily serve first-generation Latino immigrants, and folks don't trust financial institutions. Where we come from, banks fold up overnight and they take all your savings. And you get all those horrible stories of, I got all my money in the bank and now it's all gone. So sometimes it's safer to have it on, buy cattle and pigs and tangibles that you see them grow every day. The federal insurance that we have here doesn't exist in many of the countries where we come from. So the Latino Credit Union, provides up to $250,000 secure accounts to all the members. It's federal insured, and benefits that we're not used to it. But anyway, the credit union has been able to provide a safe place where folks will have access to affordable and accessible ethical financial products and services. And with financial education, which is a key component of the credit union. We also we started it as a small community project to meet that need, and our business plan said was based on the local experience of community development financial institutions, credit unions, and we were going to grow at a rate of 500 new members per month. We exceeded that number, per year. We exceeded that number in the first month. That's when we realized that our business plan was out of whack and it really needed to be updated, and that's where we started learning best practices on serving the growing immigrant community and the Latino community. North Carolina traditionally has been a black and white state, and all of a sudden, the census of 2000 really was a wake-up call to North Carolina and the rest of this country that Latinos really has been growing and that we're here to stay. So in 17 years have gone by. We have over 65,000 members, $263 million in assets, 12 branches. Our members enjoy access to a variety of products that are great tools for savings, for retirement, and for emergencies. Folks, the other thing is products and services are delivered in a culturally, not only bilingual environment, but in a culturally appropriate way, where folks, you have to earn the trust of many of these members and educate them. We got members from, the average member when we started the credit union had a 4th grade level education. So you have to educate them about what interest rate is. So when you start, so you have to start where folks are, and that's has been the beauty of this credit union that really has been empowering people to have access to financial services. And today, thousands of our members, over 19,000 members, have gone through our financial education classes. Our 2,700 people had acquired their first home through the credit union at an affordable rate. It's not an easy task to do that with a lot of our members. So we are educating folks about the importance of savings for retirement. I mean, retirement and home ownership is the key to save for everything, not just for your retirement or for emergencies, but that's how you start your business. That's how you send your kids to college. That's how you have an asset that builds equity and you borrow against it and you move on to the next level. And the credit union provides that access to home ownership, which is key. And I'm sure Abigail will talk about how we're lagging behind white folks and African American folks on home ownership. And I hope that we change that pattern around, because we're starting late. That's what I mean by arriving late. I just want to make a symbolic point that we're really starting really late to start savings. And it takes a while. Not everybody's ready to buy a home. You have to prepare them. And financial institutions, and I do believe credit unions and other banks are playing a key role on helping us access that. We hope also to provide more sophisticated products like insurance, right? It's not just about protecting your family and you die and you get some money, but today insurance products are very flexible and people can actually use them as a savings mechanism. You can borrow against it and you can make a loan for yourself from your own savings, and other vehicles securities that are more sophisticated. And if you didn't grow up in a family that teach you how to invest in those products and services, you have no clue. You need somebody who sometimes grab you by the hand and teach you how that works, and hope that they will believe that these products really work and you will trust them, because intangibles, when I'm from Costa Rica originally, and many of our members come from Mexico and all over Latin America. We believe intangibles. When they tell you, oh, you make this investment and you're going to see it grow, but it depends on the invisible hand of the market economy to grow to a certain rate, and you're going to get this great return. Sometimes it's hard to believe it if you don't see it. Seeing it, believing it. That if you buy a pig, you feed it scraps every day, you see it grow, and you know that by December, you're going to eat chicharrones at the end of the year. That is a guarantee, right? With intangibles and securities, it's a whole new concept for many Latinos, and that are new to this economy, which is very sophisticated. So I hope to contribute to this discussion and tell you more about exciting stories and products and services that the credit union is providing to help the Latinos in North Carolina specifically. I also work for Self-Help Credit Union. I'm senior vice president there. And we work in Illinois and California and Florida, where there's a tremendous growing Latino community that lacks access to those products and services. And I just want to make one more point, that as we are lagging behind, right, home ownership and having affordable and access to all these good products, we're also victims of predatory lending products and services that erodes away the little assets and the little equity that we have in our assets. So we need to be vigilant of practices.
Thank you, John. And I want to come back to a couple points that you've all made. Before we start the conversation, I think that we should be able to have a discussion for about 15 minutes and then leave about 15 minutes for questions. If any of you are tweeting, we have a hashtag that we'd love for you to use. It's Latinos Advance. So please go ahead and use that. I did this morning. Don't tweet while we're talking. I want to start with something that, if not all of you, most of you brought up, which is a question of culture. And this is not to say, and I know, Abigail, you brought this up in your presentation, this is not to say that there aren't more fundamental factors that are underlying our lack of preparedness for retirement, including insufficient income to be able to let go of some of it every week or every month to save, or just lack of access to those plans, which I think you're all trying to innovate in that space and give access to people who, by and large, are not going to have a workplace savings plan through their employer. But each of you, I think, touched on this question, which I think is very familiar to all of us in this room, certainly anyone in this community. Even if you're born in the United States, if you are not growing up in a family that comes from a place that trusts the bank or the financial industry, or it just has it's not that there's a lack of a concept of savings, but that there's a lack of a concept of saving in the way that we save in America. How do we overcome that? So I'd love to hear from each of you. What is the single best idea in the platform that you are operating in? What is the single best idea that you have to tackle that issue? And if you could, while you're doing that, if you could touch also on this question, which I find fascinating. You raised this excellent point, John, about intangibles. As a community, we strongly believe in the intangible of a college education. It may or it may not pay off. That's the reality. But we almost uniformly believe that it is absolutely worth going for it. We all have that experience of families that will do everything they can to send Carlos to MIT, right? That's an intangible that we have somehow all bought into. How do we do that in this space? So whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first, only because I want to start by saying, just in the brief time I've been on this panel, it reminds me of how much there is to learn. And I look to Katie because we need to draw from so much of the experiences. And John mentioned about getting people to take financial literacy courses and the like. And clearly, as a government program, and you mentioned people being fearful of financial services or the banks, they also have a little trepidation about government agencies. And so we at Secure Choice have that to overcome. And we fully intend to do so through very aggressive marketing and outreach. We'll work with partners such as AARP, such as Unidos US. We need people in the community who can convince others that, hey, this is something that is of value to you, and that's part of the cultural issue that you raise, that we need to take that to a higher art form and learn from others as to how we do that with people who don't necessarily, at least at first blush, understand what we're trying to achieve on their behalf. And so we're going to need to be very creative about that. We'll use technology to a large extent. We hope to be able to make one of the ways that we buy confidence is by showing the tangible, which is a monthly statement that shows this is how much your, if you will, nest egg has grown over time. And I think providing people that type of sense of somehow, some way, either through hard copy, but maybe more importantly, online, so that they can access that information. They know that there's real money behind what they've invested. So I think taking that, and then to your last point, I come from the higher ed world. I worked for the University of California for 9 years, and I've seen sort of a cultural revolution that's taken place amongst Latino students in terms of their college going experience. They're trying to achieve more than just getting a bachelor's, and we're all about fostering that in California, and I'm sure in many other states. But you're right, we need to do the same thing with retirement savings. We need to create the sense that it's almost an afterthought to think about it, that you don't even question, and just as I think more and more folks don't question anymore about the need to go to college, we have to get people in the Latino community saying, I don't question the fact that we need to be doing this. And it's an afterthought that, and we have the benefit and the luxury of being able to do it through payroll deduction, where we think the pain is a lot less if people don't have to actually physically take the money. I know Carlos has a thought about that, but
Right.
I do think that will help us in the regard that having payroll deduction is a nice vehicle so that it seems seamless when it goes into somebody's account.
You want to respond to that, Carlos?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on payroll deduction?
Well, first, I think so we talked about the family, and we talked about the technology. I think the fact that we all have a smartphone, it's a huge advantage today that we didn't have 20 years ago. So when we designed Finhabits, we said everybody has a computer, and that's probably their only computer, and it's a very small screen, so we have to explain everything and make it super simple so that no matter where they are, if they're in the bus or they're at home or they're on a Sunday, they can do it there. And we had to integrate that family part in the messaging, because that's how we position your need, that it's a need that you might have 30 years from today, but it's very hard to get someone who's 32 to think, oh, what will I do when I'm 60? But because in the Latino household, we probably have our parents living with us, our children are there as well. It's easier to bring that 30-year projection and maybe go also to talk about your kids when you talk to 30-year-old, because it's happening there every day. So you want to make sure that you say, if you're a 30-year-old, you want to make sure that you're saying, think about what happened when you're 60. Well, will your daughter want you at home? Maybe not. Maybe you should prepare for that. And the money that you're making right now, it's great. You're middle income engineer. It's great. It's working very well. Now you know that you can make the money work for you. So the money that you're earning, if it's just there, it's great, but you can consume it. But think about the future and make sure that the money is working for you from now on. So that's what we do in the messaging, and to nudge people to start and act now. And then the last thing is we do it very simple, and we try to make it so that anyone with as little as $5 a week can start in less than 10 minutes. So there's no excuse. Now on the payroll, we don't do payroll deduction because we try to make it super simple. So we don't have the luxury of telling the consumer, oh, well, talk to your employer. We know that's very hard. So we say, it's so easy. Connect your bank, and you control how much you want to contribute. And it's even easier because if you switch jobs tomorrow, you control your contributions. And if you stop working for a month, you can pause your contributions. And then we will nudge you to say, hey, you've been pausing for 2 months, turn it back on. So we give our users control of how much money to put in, and if they want to do it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, it doesn't matter. It's very easy to do it, and it's very easy to pause if they need to pause, or it's very easy to take money out.
So you still have an automated feature.
Yes.
It's not coming out of payroll, it's coming out of your bank. So you do see the money come from my paycheck into the bank. I have some sense. We were talking earlier in the green room. It's always so much easier for everybody, when they don't even see it in their paycheck. But so in this case, okay, I see it. I know I'm making a contribution. I set the amount and I saw it in the bank account, and now it's not there. But you're still relying on this automatic withdrawal idea.
So we make it
as a nudge.
Correct, and we think that if we convert people to decide and say, I want to put 5 or I want to put 50 a week, it's a conversion that it's worth a lot more because they are in control and they feel in control, and it's also, it builds trust because they know that they can put the money in, and we promote the Roth IRAs. That's the vehicle and it also, if they need the money, their contributions, they can withdraw.
And you both touched on that, doing that after tax frees you to do that. I find it interesting that what you're doing as a tangible way to envision your own retirement is to, this was certainly true in my household growing up, like look at your own household and you can picture yourself when you're 60 or 70 because you're living with your parents or your grandparents. So there's a constant sort of, it's easier to picture the future when you live in a multi-generational household, I think. John, you raised this issue about how do you get people to focus on the tangible. What's the single best practice that you've identified to get folks to overcome the cultural barriers?
You mentioned education as an intangible that we all believe in, and that was the best asset my father gave me. My parents passed on to me. He says, my parents were farm workers, and he knew that. He said, what I'm going to do to you, whatever you do, sometimes I don't want you working in the farm, you go to school and you educate yourself, and you have to do better than I did. That's something that I think we all in our family, our parents expect from us. We need to do a little bit better or far better than they did. And it's something that nobody can take away from you. And as the global economy develops and keeps changing, without an education, we will be lagging behind technology and many of the sophisticated products and services that you need to have a certain level of education to understand and manipulate and manage. My advice, I do believe that, and this is why I love credit unions, because they really look for the best interest of their members and financial interest, it's not about marketing. A lot of financial institutions are missing the point. If you want to be very effective with the Latino community, when you offer new products and services, you need to have a component of education. People need to understand what the benefit of this product is, how do you use it, and if they understand that, they will bring mama, daddy. If it's good for you, for my mama, everybody's gonna get it, right? You have to understand it, believe in it, and it takes somebody taking some time to educate you about that product. It's not just kind of the big picture and the marketing scheme that traditionally has been done. That has been the success on the Latino Community Credit Union, is that folks, once they understand the benefit, people believe in it and buy it and will recommend it to other folks. We don't even spend money on marketing. It's word of mouth. A lot of the benefits of the credit unions.
Samantha, you may want to answer this piece as well, but I wanted to direct a different question to you. And again, John, you touched on this as well. I want to talk a little bit about public policy choices that we are currently making. Obviously, we're making some of these choices at the state level, and so many states have successfully pursued models similar to California. But we're making also different choices at the federal level. John raised the issue of predatory lending, which is not the topic here today, but it does insinuate an issue that I think we should all touch on, which is when you save, anytime you're investing, there is something to the backside of that, which is the fees. And for small dollar savers, which is going to be primarily, your accounts are going to be small dollar accounts, secure choice. Certainly they're going to start out as small dollar accounts. Fees can really take a bite out of those. What are some ideas about that? What can we do about that?
Sure, that's actually, I think, lets me combine both.
Yes, go for it.
Both questions to answer to both questions, rather, and that when we approach retirement security in our work, we are constantly going back to the experts, whether those are stakeholders on the financial services side, state officials, credit unions and other partners, but our community, our affiliates and the people that they serve. We do focus groups. We engage them to make sure that we're meeting their needs and what we're putting forward. So we get information on Latino perspective of different savings vehicles and what might nudge them to participate, down to how much they're willing to see out of their paycheck and still participate in a program. We're actually putting together some exciting research led by, I see her back here, Dr. Patricia Foxon, who's with us at Unidos US. really looking at effective outreach to the Latino community, and with a focus on retirement vehicles and products. So she's been out talking with our community, with other folks who have experience with enrolling Latinos in other complex programs for which they're newly available. So think about Affordable Care Act enrollment. That brought health care coverage to nearly 4 million Latinos who had never had coverage before. So enrolling in a complex new program that you're putting some skin in the game and seeing money taken out of your savings for. So we're taking learnings from that and trying to put that together in a comprehensive report to help state officials and other folks in the area to better understand, how to approach outreach in a culturally and linguistically appropriate way, so that when, for example, California's 3.8 million Latinos have access for the very first time to a retirement savings vehicle, that they're getting adequate outreach, and they know what that means for their finances, and will take that step. I mean, Latinos are savers. Our research tells us that it might not be in traditional savings vehicles. They might be using
I think that's such an important point.
different cultural vehicles, fundas, other things like that. They're savers, even though our polling tells us that 3/4 of Latinos feel that they have trouble making ends meet every month. Saving is very important. We just have to connect that information to the folks putting these programs out there.
Well, I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions, and we have about 15 minutes to do that. So there's mics, one mic, and if you have two mics. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll signal. Okay, over here in the, yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Monica Ballesteros. I recently graduated from Fletcher School at Tufts. And I was wondering, a very sort of specific feature of Latino economic lives here is also remittances. And I was wondering if you could also sort of pinpoint how does that interact, that financial obligation interacts with the desire or the ability to save for sort of individual retirement.
And you raised that issue of the role remittances, and well, there's clearly an impact.
I mean, when we interact with our clients, they already have an institution, a bank account, the checking account, and they usually do that, the remittances through that institution. So Finhabits doesn't get involved in the remittances. What we make them understand is that these $5 or these $20 a week, they should be set aside for 10, 20, 30 years. So as part of the budgeting exercise, that if they're contributing or they're sending money back to Mexico every month, that should be part of the budgeting phase.
It's a remittance to your own future.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I would like to say that remittances, that's something that, especially with the immigrant community, is very important. A lot of immigrants, we come here for economic opportunity and to sustain our families. And that's how you do it. You send money back, you're safe here, or your family's not here, you send it back, to finish your home, to pay for the surgery of your mother's or grandmother's cataracts, whatever, right? There's always a need for money. And remittances historically, I remember when we started the credit union, it was really expensive. Talking about fees, this is a product that through competition and advocacy, we have been able to bring down the cost of remittances. And Latino Credit Union today, we use we have access to the regular money transmitters, but today we are even doing away with that. Since we can do our own plastic. We in a global economy, it's about plastic nowadays, right, Carlos? So our members, have access to a debit card where they basically send one back home, and the family, as long as they have access to an ATM machine anywhere in the world, China, Mexico, you name it, for 75 cents, you can get your money out in seconds, right? Instantly. So that's one way we're saving our money, our members a lot of money. There is some convenience issues and speed issues, but again, it's more marketing than reality. There are many ways our folks can save money. It's an electronic impulse what you send, right, to the other side, and people get their money. But then there's the cultural, learning the technology, how to get it, and all that stuff. But that's one area where there used to be predatory fees to send. The average remittances is about $300, and also, I want to touch on the fact that it feels like, sometimes you hear folks saying, why are these people sending money back home? We need it here. They should be saving it here. And it is savings we are interconnected. There's not much difference between Mexico and the United States. Physically, the distance is there, but we all commute. We are global workers, basically. And we need to keep working on facilitating to lower the cost of remittances, but also the more money folks send back home, those folks who complain about illegal immigration, is a huge benefit because it helps people stay home where they want to be. So United States, Mexico, I think Mexicans alone send over $26 billion of remittances back home, which is more than the foreign aid the United States provides. So it is a huge plus. It's an added plus, I think, to the foreign aid. So there are benefits also for the remittances by immigrants.
I want to make sure that we have opportunity to take more questions. So I want over here, and then there's a gentleman on the aisle over here in a red necktie who also needs a microphone.
Hi, thank you for the great information you provided. So I wanted to go back to the education versus financial stability metaphor. So you mentioned, John, thank you again, that education is something that you can't get taken away from you. And I feel like a lot of us have heard that from our parents. And with financial security and savings, a lot of people, especially in the Latino community, we think that if you save money, banks can take it away from you. Thinking about the financial crisis and when a lot of people lost their savings because these banks kind of tanked, and probably from our own experiences back in our countries. So how do you bypass that, and how do you give people some type of certainty that, these savings will not get taken away from you and you will actually earn value on them?
I would say, from our perspective, we're benefited by the fact that we're a government program, and as such, we are there for the long term. We're not going anywhere. And as it relates to the issue of fees, I think we've had the financial services industry at the congressional level have not been happy with secure choice programs. They'd prefer we don't get started because, at least in their minds, they've stated it as unfair competition. But I think what really is going to happen, and what I hope happens, is that we're able to tamp down on fees. First of all, we're statutorily restricted in what we can charge in terms of fees, but I think even beyond that, through what I hope will be very intense competition for the business, we're going to drive those fees so that they're so low that they're almost not a part of the concern. That through that, and hopefully it has a cultural change across the industry, that people see that you can provide those products at a lower cost to populations that heretofore haven't been served by the financial services industry. And that's why they haven't been there, is because they're saying it's too expensive on a per person basis to provide those services. So we hope to show that you can do so in a way that doesn't result in large fees being taken away. So I'm not so certain that it's necessarily because those institutions aren't going to be there. It's just that they deplenish the savings through those fee charges that we'd like to see go away.
Yeah. I know there's a question over here on the aisle in the red necktie.
Thank you so much. This has been great. We come in all forms, colors, and shape, but also there is a big group of us, and I think that question goes to Finhabits. How are you looking to reach Latinos that speak Portuguese? We sometimes forget about that there is a bunch of us who grew up speaking Portuguese, and we are part of this group too.
It's a great question.
So when we started Finhabits, we started with the idea of reaching out to the Mexican-American community, both in Spanish and in English, and we started with a very specific goal of Texas. And then after growing and growing, we noticed also that, and it was about 50-50, but then we in Houston, we noticed that a lot of African Americans were interested in the service as well. And I think that proved that we made it very simple so that it attracted other minorities that we didn't thought it was going to be designed for it. Now, with the language is the same thing, Like we do see, because we're about inclusiveness, so turning it into another language is not just translating it, but it's understanding the culture very well. So we're going step by step. We do have plans to make sure that everything that we do is about inclusiveness, and we understand that in this country it's very, very diverse, and it's very mixed. But we're not going to add just a language translating everything, because that doesn't work. So we need to make sure that someone in our team has a very true understanding of the Brazilian culture, and then we'll do it.
Thank you for being honest.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question at least, and I see that we have someone in the back.
Hi, so my name is Carlos Marguera, and we've been talking a lot about, of course, the problems that we have and then the education programs that we should, have, like in terms of financial security, this and this and that. Do you think that moving forward, there needs to be changes to outreach strategies? Because we talk about, well, we need to educate them, but how do you actually get to Latino communities across the country? Is it through churches? Because obviously political engagement is a little bit different, but that's also big issues. Like, how do you connect and get the information to them? Thank you.
And there's nodding from other heads, so I think this is a question that people really want to hear more about. So a great one to close on.
Yeah, I'll just start and just say, I mentioned it briefly about our outreach with community partners, like Unidos US and AARP and others. We're following the model to a large extent that in California, it's called Cover California. It's the ACA program that depended on and was only successful because they were able to tap into the communities that where the program was going to go by working with people who are trusted folks in those communities. And in our same vein, I think we believe that we need to work with those partners in order to convince folks that we're a legitimate concern that they can trust. And so I think we're going to use that model by and large, and then the traditional means of outreach through publications, through online media, through whatever it takes to make sure that people are at least aware of it, and then go deeper in terms of the education. And that's why I'm curious about financial literacy classes and whether or not we can use that as a basis to educate people further, not just about secure choice, but about savings in general.
I will say that, there are many ways and there are different methods that work better with different communities, right? They have to be culturally appropriate, linguistically proficient. And we, in any community, I think it's true this, that we work with folks that we trust. In the financial world, we need to work with the people that we trust. And so you mentioned churches, growing up Catholic, when a priest says jump, we don't ask how high, we just do it, right? It's folks, you go with trusted leaders, community leaders. It is not easy to gain the trust of the community. And it's easy lost also, especially when people become victims of scams and fraud and so many issues. It's really hard to regain the trust. And you hear about the Equifax breach, right? We all should be concerned about that. So we need to work with the folks that we need, that we trust. In the financial world, banks and credit unions are secured by the I think this is respecting to the previous question, about trust and about security, what guarantees us that the money is going to be there? We got federal insurance in this country, which is a huge blessing. You know, FDIC insures banks in this country, and the NCUA insures credit unions. So that's my 2 cents in that.
Do you want
Just
to?
another on
please, ma'am.
place matters and trust. You know, again, I can't talk more highly about our affiliate network. You know, I can walk into a community and they don't necessarily know who I am, or Unidos US might even be at that point, but they know who the leaders in our community who our affiliates are. And that's powerful because they do have that trust and that long-term relationship. It's also powerful for me because with our network, on any issue that we need to galvanize movement on, I can, you know, in California, we have, I want to say over 50 affiliates, maybe even 69 affiliates. I can get those leaders in a room and help them on, you know, there's really no education. You know, they need some specifics, but they are ready to help the community do what's needed, get good information out there, and help spread the word. You know, I think we've seen that clearly with Affordable Care Act this year. Open enrollment's going to be starting, and there is little to no federal funding for outreach and enrollment. That's just devastating on a whole nother level, but we are, and other groups and community groups are charging ahead to make sure that everyone knows about open enrollment, that it's still the law of the land, and to get enrolled and what they need to do. So that power of community and trusted messengers is absolutely key.
Carlos, do you want to have the last word on outreach?
Yes, I mean, we do a lot of the outreach through digital channels, so it's a little bit different. What we try to create is a movement from the bottom up, so the consumer starts saving for retirement, and they tell the cousin, they tell the friend, and that's how it has worked, and that's how it has spread out. And now we're starting to talk to more local organizations, but we started the other way around. But I think what has worked for us is talking about trust, is just being very transparent and being very, you know, during the onboarding, we tell the people, yeah, you're not going to make $1 million in you know, if you're 45 and you're putting $5 a week. This is how much. This is the expectation that you should have, and it's never too late. So go for it. Start even if it's $5 a week, and being very transparent. And when we talk about the fees, we also make sure that we communicate that the fees, you know, we charge $1 a month for an account that is between 0 and 2,500, and then we charge 0.5% a year when the account is 2,500 or above, and that includes, you know, everything. The fee is it's a very important thing, and it should be very easy to tell, because when you start putting all these other things on top, and then the consumer starts feeling like that's already scary. Mm-hmm. So building the trust with the consumer, that was our initial approach, and then now the consumer is bringing us to more larger organizations, which is...
All right. Well, thank you. Please join me in thanking the panel this morning.
Thank you.
And also in thanking Jeremy and Abigail for hosting all of us as well. So thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Christina.
And Aspen Abigail.
Yes.
Thank you.
The 2 Abigail rule we violated today. Thank you guys all for coming. It was a fantastic panel. We've already thanked them, but Christina, Carlos, Samantha, Steve, John, we're glad you made it. And thanks so much for a great conversation.
Thank you.